Welcome back now to part 2 of new and revamped core features. We're going to look at these items here. First of all, let's look at the Edge browser, which is Microsoft's new UWP app-based browser. I'm going to call up Edge here, Microsoft Edge, and this is what the browser looks like. Now we have a few interesting features inside this browser. So for example, we have something called the Reading View, a PDF reader, and extensions through the Microsoft Store. Let's look at all three of those. As far as the Reading View, I can't really see it now unless I'm on a web page that shows it, and I'm just going to put in an article here. Let's say this article about Toys R Us coming back from the dead in 2019. And see this little icon right here just popped up, and it says Reading View. If I click, first of all, let's take a look at this article. Then I'm going to click that Reading View and see how it transforms itself into something a little bit more readable, more like an ebook type version of the article. And if I click it again, it should go back to the normal view. It also has a nice PDF reader. Let's just take, I don't know, something like gardening PDF, for example, and find a PDF document, and you'll see it opens up in Edge in a very nice PDF viewer. This is a 269-page document. Wow. So it's going to take a moment for it to load. But as soon as it loads, you'll see that we have a pretty nice, handy PDF viewer. One moment for it to finish here. There we go. So we have a very nice viewer, as a matter of fact, with several options that we can use to work with in that. And also now we have extensions in the Edge browser for the first time, and those are in the Windows Store, or now it's called the Microsoft Store. I'm going to click here on Start, and then I'm going to click my Microsoft Store, and what pops up here are several items including Edge extensions. So if I click Edge extensions, you'll see that I have now many extensions that I can add into the Edge browser. Alright, let's take a look now at accounts and some of the things we can do with accounts. First of all, OneDrive is now integrated. If I click my File Explorer, you'll see that I have a OneDrive option here, and I have several items, several folders where I store documents for OneDrive, in OneDrive, so that no matter what computer I'm on, I can get to these documents. So that's now built into Windows 10. I now have something called an Azure Active Directory, which is a subscription-based sign-in. If you work for some companies that have an Azure Active Directory subscription to Windows 10 or to Office 365, for example, that is you can now sign into your Microsoft Office or your Microsoft Windows 10 through that Azure Active Directory from that organization. Could be a school, could be a company. We now have multi-factor authentication. And I'll show you what I mean by that. I'm going to go here to the Settings app, and I'll go down to Accounts and Sign In Options. And you'll see now that I can use pins and fingerprints and face recognition and all sorts of things as two-factor authentication. That's a security topic we're not going to get into in depth in this course, but factors are some combination of things that you know, things that you see, things you know, things you do, or something you are. For example, biometrics, and using more than one of those factors in order to authenticate you. Microsoft or local login. Again, I'm going to go back to the same place that I was just at, Accounts and Your Info. And you can see right now I'm logged on locally to this machine, but I'm not logged on to my Microsoft account. Or I can also sign onto this machine using my Microsoft account. A little bit like Azure Active Directory, except it's a personal account rather than a school or office account. Next, let's look at some of the display options. We can now set up our graphics processor per app. Now, I'm not going to go into where we do this at this point. I will tell you that it's in Settings, and then in the graphics area here in Settings, under Devices. But I'm not going to go into it to save time. But you can now set, if you have more than one graphic processor, you can now say, well, I want this graphic processor to run these apps over here and this one to run these apps over here. We can now project either from another device to our computer, say our phone to our computer, or from the computer to another device, such as your TV, for example, in something called Miracast. We now have better multi-display settings. If I have 2, 3, 4 different displays, I now have quite a bit of capability in how I can set up my displays. And I now have something new called scaling. And this one I will show you. I'm going to go in here to devices, and then, not devices, excuse me, that's the wrong one, system, and then display. And I have something here called scale, and if I change the scale, you'll see that everything gets bigger on my system. And if I go back to 100%, everything gets smaller. This is really nice. It's a better way of changing things than the old way of having to change resolution. That way you can only set your resolution to whatever the natural or native resolution is of your screen, and still change the scale. So that's pretty cool. In security, we now have something called the UEFI Secure Boot. We will get into this later on, so I'm not going to dwell on it now, but it is a hardware level boot system that makes sure that it's booting to the right system files and that those system files haven't been changed. Windows Defender is a built-in antivirus software and firewall that Windows now has built into it, and it's actually not a bad antivirus software package. Sometimes we still want to use third-party ones, but this is much better than the old ones we used to have. Multi-factor authentication we already talked about up here under accounts, so I won't dwell on that one. Privacy and telemetry options. I now have quite a bit of say in what Microsoft can and cannot see from my system. And if I go into the settings area, I'm just going to type privacy, because this is the easiest. Whoops, not privacy, that's silly. Privacy, there, that's a little bit better. You see now I have several privacy settings that I can set in what I allow Windows or Microsoft to see and what I don't allow them to see. Now I also have something in here, and let me close that down and close this down. I didn't really mean to open the web page. I also have something in here called Diagnostic Data Viewer, which we will also look at later, which is a way to see what we have sent to Microsoft. So now I can actually see everything that my computer is sending to Microsoft, and I have a way to visualize that and have a list of everything that my computer is sending in. So it gives me a better view of it, and thus better control over it, because now I can say, wait a minute, I don't want this stuff going to Microsoft, so I'll change that. And that's the Diagnostic Data Viewer. So under the hood, there is a lot changed. Under the hood, by under the hood, I mean these core features. A lot has changed, and we now have a lot of capability we have not had with any previous versions of Windows. So next we're going to take on this, in video 5, we'll take on this idea of apps and applications and see what the difference is.